Yesterday, the U.S. Department of Justice cleared Officer Darren Wilson of civil rights violations in the fatal shooting of Michael Brown.
But found many constitutional violations, such as evidence of racial bias in policing, and said the city and the court system was more focused on collecting revenue than preserving public safety. The DOJ presented a list of 26 recommendations, some of which have already been implemented, said Mayor Ferguson.
St. Louis Defense Attorney Chet Pleban joins us on the phone from sunny Florida this morning. Good morning to you, Chet.
Good morning. Good morning. 85 yesterday, 85 today.
All right, we don't need to hear that. Thank you. We're warming up, though. First of all, what was your reaction to the decision from the Department of Justice?
Well, Randy, some people are going to embrace the decision, and some people will say it's not a fair and objective report. It's politically motivated. It's result-oriented. In other words, the government had the result that it wanted, and then it used the investigation to back up that result. I found it rather ironic and rather interesting that on the very same day that the Department of Justice exonerated Darren Wilson, at least to the extent that they found no credible evidence to indict him, that they then turned around and on that very day, they indicted an entire city. Now, the fact of the matter is, if the city of Ferguson is engaging in this type of conduct, then that needs to be condemned, and it certainly needs to be corrected. But if this is some sort of a political witch hunt where you're making a city a scapegoat, then that also needs to be identified and condemned.
All right, now the 26 recommendations, they can refuse and get sued by the DOJ. They're not going to do that, too expensive. Or they can enter into a consent decree. That's going to be expensive, too.
Both will be very expensive, and I suspect that at the end of the day, what's going to happen here is that if they don't agree with the terms that the government proposes, that they'll be sued. And you're right. Excuse me. They can't afford to have that. Excuse me. Now, I don't know. Have you guys had a chance to read this report?
I've not read it in its entirety. I have read some.
Well, I've read all 102 pages of it. The report is filled with opinions, conclusions, and statistics. And, of course, I've learned a long time ago that you can make statistics dance to whatever tune that you're humming. But the question that I have, I can't tell when I read all 102 pages whether or not those opinions and conclusions are factually supported. In other words, is there any evidence to back up those opinions? Let me give you an example. There are a lot of things cited in the report that are critical of police conduct or police misconduct, if you will. People who have had incidents with police officers where they've been, unlawfully stopped, unlawfully searched, unlawfully arrested, those sorts of things. Well, I can't tell from that report whether or not the government did any sort of backup investigation to determine the credibility of those crimes. Because remember, what started all this was Michael Brown and the altercation with Darren Wilson. And what the government concluded on that is that the people that were coming forward, certainly at the beginning of this, were not credible, and certainly not credible enough to indict. Now, I don't know whether or not this report is filled with the same kind of issue where people say things and then it's reported.
Well, the question is whether or not Ferguson's in a position financially to fight any of that, and at this point, it doesn't look like they are. So it looks like
I don't think they will.
No, and they'll go with that.
Come home, Chet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, get back. He's already got a cough, and he's just thinking about coming back.
I do.
Chet Pleban.
All right, Chet, thank
from
you.
sunny Florida.